Panel members Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabien Poulin, and I will be chairing this meeting today. Procedure for this hearing would be as follows. Listed on the agenda appearing on the screen are applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we will hear oral submissions from any interested parties. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all statutory declarations?
We've received a statutory declaration for item number 1.
Thank you very much, Madam Coordinator. I will administer the oath for the balance of the applications. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the discretion of the chair. Okay. Finally, before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel?
I do.
Ms. Chandler, which one?
B-00267 and 268.
That would be application number 2 concerning Boris O'Kane Road. Okay, so we'll put that particular item at the back of our agenda today. We'll deal with the other 3 at the front end of our agenda. We also have to adopt the minutes of several last public hearings. Any changes or revisions to be adopted to the June 3rd hearing, or all in favor of those minutes as they were written? All in favor? Those minutes are adopted. Of the June 17th, 2020 hearing, all those in favor of adopting those minutes, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. All of July 8th minutes, are those agreeable to the panel? All in favor? I was absent on July 22nd, therefore I will not vote on these minutes. All in favor of adopting the minutes of July 22nd, please raise your hand. 4 persons agreeing with those applications. We'll now hear the application schedules for this hearing and deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications scheduled for this hearing? I don't believe we have any requests for adjournment. Therefore, we will now proceed to hearing application number 1. Is Ms. Libman available? Ms. Libman, you're muted at the present time.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, I believe we have a statutory declaration on file for your application, so we won't need to administer the oath for this one. Could you give a brief description of your application this morning, please?
Sure. So what we have is 2 low-rise residential buildings that are under construction. Each will have 18 units, and they have shared driveways leading to underground parking. So easements are requested over the shared portions of the driveways. And we're hoping to sever into 2 separate properties for financing purposes at this point.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, have you any comments from the department?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The department hasn't had an opportunity to review the application and is of the opinion that the proposal is appropriate and represents controlled and orderly development of the area.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions or comments. Mr. Vervoort?
No questions or comments. I would just say that I would note that it's under a site plan application currently, and that the proposed joint use and maintenance agreement will deal with any issues regarding any shared common driveways, etc.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler, any questions, comments?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, any questions or comments?
No concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments?
No concerns.
Thank you very much. Are you aware of the one condition that is on this application, Ms. Libman?
Yes, we are.
Are you in
And
agreement?
acceptable. Yes.
Thank you very much. So with that, I ask that the panel approve this application. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Your application is approved. Thank you, Ms. Libman.
Great. Thank you very much.
We will now move on to application number 3. Application number 2 will be at the back end of our meeting. Mr. Scott Irwin, this application is concerning 3331 Conley Road. Mr. Irwin, are you available? Your mic is muted, Mr. Irwin.
Hi there. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We have to administer an oath concerning the statutory declaration on your property. Are you prepared to take that oath now?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed and provide us with a brief summary of your application.
Okay, so this is a freestanding garage, which is to replace an existing freestanding garage. The proposed garage is slightly bigger to the back and to the east of the property. The existing zoning is a 10-meter setback, and the existing building is only at 2 meters. So we're just asking for relief on that side yard, exterior side yard.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the proposal and has no concerns. Staff recognize that the intent of the application is to essentially allow for the reconstruction of the existing garage in a similar location, and notes that the increase in size will be further away from the lot line as opposed to closer. And as such, staff is of the opinion that the 4 tests are met.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Any questions, comments, or concerns, Mr. Otto? You're muted again. Still muted.
Fine with it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lewis, any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Ms. Chandler, any questions, comments, or concerns?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort, any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I agree with Mr. Walker's comments, and even though the variance is large in this case, it's replacement of an existing structure, and the extension is towards the rear of the property. So I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Given no further questions or comments, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Your application is approved. Mr. Irwin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now move on to application number 4. Application number 4 is dealing with 6419 Aston Road. Is Mr. Hurtis is available?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. I need to administer an oath regarding the statutory declaration or the sign posting. Are you available to take that oath now?
I am, yes.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please proceed and provide us with a brief summary of your application.
What we are requesting is to demolish and reconstruct an existing sunroom, 4-season room. The existing structure is failing due to settling at the foundation. We're requesting to the new construction be closer to the water to accommodate a metal screw pile foundation construction.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, have you any comments from on behalf of PED?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has had an opportunity to review the application and has no concerns with the proposal. Again, staff recognize that the intent is to allow for the reconstruction of the sunroom in a similar location of the existing sunroom. And as such, staff is of the opinion that the four tests are met.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from the panel? Ms. Chandler?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
No problems. Good.
Mr. Otto?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort?
No comments or concerns.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll have to excuse Ms. Chandler since she has a conflict with item number 2. So we'll move on to item number 2 once Ms. Chandler leaves our conference. Thank you very much, Ms. Chandler. Thank you. Is Mr. Scott Alain here?
Present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alain, I need to administer an oath concerning the statutory declaration on the property.
I believe the property owner is going to take the oath as they posted the signs, and he's present on the call. That would be Hugo Lalonde.
Mr. Lalonde, are you able to take that oath now?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yep.
Thank you very much. And who's going to be making the brief presentation? Mr. Alain?
That would be Julie. Yeah.
Sorry to
Okay.
cut you off there. Good morning,
That's okay.
everyone.
Good morning.
Members of the committee.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wondered if we should go through the amendment first.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Notice.
Yes, I believe there's some administrative amendments we need to make. I believe with respect to the legal description, instead of being part 1, it should be part 2. Is that correct, Ms. Carrera?
It should actually be both part 1 and part 2. So there's 2 consent applications and one relates to part 1 and one relates to part 2.
Thank you. With respect to B00267, I believe it should be, this parcel is to be merged with the property to the east, not the west.
That's right. It should be merged to 3717 Boris O'Kane.
Perfect. And then we have an additional zoning bylaw amendment. The extra zoning bylaw amendment would be D02-02-200098. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there were 2 applications that were submitted after these consent applications were submitted.
Okay.
We're just bringing the notice to reflect the 2 new applications.
Yep. No, that's fine. We just have to do this for administrative purposes. And the second plan of subdivision application is D07-16-20-0015. Is that correct?
There was an error in the notice. It looks like there was an incorrect application number, and then they added the correct number, but didn't cross out the first reference.
Okay.
So I think, Mr. Chair, we got an email, I think that came in that clarifies that. So I think it's supposed to say that the applications indicate that the property is the subject of a zoning bylaw amendment application D02-02-20-0041 and a plan of subdivision application D07-16-20-0015 under the Planning Act. I think, were those the changes, Ms. Carrera?
Yeah, there's several changes. So there was the deletion of the incomplete application number that was in the notice. There was the addition of the D07-16-20-0015. There's also an application number for a zoning bylaw amendment that I'm not sure where it came from. It wasn't on our application. It ends in 0098, and that should be deleted. I believe that's a mistake.
Can the Deputy Secretary confirm that should be deleted?
Mr. Chair, we would take our direction from the applicant, perhaps planning may be aware of what the correct file numbers are as well.
Mr. Walker?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Hawk from the Planning Infrastructure and Economic Development Department. The applicant is correct. D02-02-20-0098 was a incorrectly entered application into our system. So I apologize for that, and that was included in staff's report. That should not be included. Instead, it should be D07-07-20-0016. That is in fact the lifting of the holding, which should replace that prior indicated zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgins. Okay. So now that we have that out of the way, Ms. Carrera, would you like to proceed with a brief description of your application?
Sure. We have a presentation on file if you're interested in some visuals, but or I could just describe it to you. Essentially, we're attempting to correct an error that occurred back in February when we came to the committee with a reciprocal consent applications. The property that's currently known as 3713 Boris O'Kane Road spans both the rural and urban area, and we had proposed a consent on what we thought was the urban boundary. It was later determined after the consent was approved that the boundary is actually in a different location because the urban boundary is established by a 500-meter distance from the Trail Road landfill on the west side of Highway 416. And that distance was measured incorrectly. So we are back asking for an adjustment of approximately 20 meters. Some of the land that is actually urban is tied to the rural parcel. We want to move it back to the urban parcel, which is 3717 Boris O'Kane. You can go to the next slide. So here you can see the existing severance line is the purple line, and we're proposing the orange line. So the line between the two properties would be moving west. We have a secondary consent application also to establish an access easement over 3809 Boris O'Kane, which is to the immediate south. And this came, there is a municipal street planned for that location. However, it won't be a dedicated road in the near future or for a little while. So city staff had asked that we establish an access easement to provide a secondary access off Boris O'Kane to the 3713 Boris O'Kane parcel, which is where rural employment use has been approved through a site plan application. We're currently lifting the hold and doing an amendment to add phase 2. And the next slide shows the policy context, how 3717 is in the urban area and the other two in the rural. And then the next slide shows the existing zoning. So there are active subdivision and zoning applications for the urban end of 3717. So when we hopefully move the property line between the two parcels, we'll fix the zoning through that active application that's still ongoing at the east end of those lands. And then lastly is a slide that highlights the two parcels. So the blue is the lot line adjustment and the orangey red color is the proposed access easement, which would eventually become a municipal road and not be required.
Thank you, Ms. Carrera. Mr. Hodgins, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has no concerns with this application. The lot line adjustment is largely correct to correct an error as identified. The end result will line the parcels up with the ongoing site plan control application on 3713 Boris O'Kane and the plan of subdivision application on 3717 Boris O'Kane, along with lining it up with the urban boundary. With regards to the access easement proposed, staff had requested that as part of the site plan control process for 3713 Barroso Kane as a condition of approval. Staff have no concerns with either of the requests at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cameron. I'd now ask the panel if they have any questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Vervoort?
No comments or concerns. I would just note that we would impose the normal section 50 subsection 12 condition to merge the two properties into one.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort. Any comments, questions, or comments, Mr. Lewis?
No concerns, but I see with all the amendments and changes, I may not be surprised to see it come back again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I guess the only concern I have is in the air photo, it shows very close to mineral extraction. And I do notice that this was a pit at one time and it's going to be rehabilitated. But does it meet all the minimum distance requirements, especially if they're going to put residential zoning in there?
Mr. Hodgins or Ms. Carrera?
Yeah, I was just going to notice, so the, first of all, there were two active aggregate pits in this location in the past. Both pits had ceased operation and the property owner is going through the process of relinquishing the licenses. One has been relinquished already. So there is no active pit use anymore. And the purpose of the lot line adjustment would be to line up the urban residential subdivision at 3717 Barroso Kane with the urban boundary, which is a 500-meter distance from the trail road landfill, which is the required distance from a landfill. So the new lot line for that urban subdivision will be in the correct location, reflecting official plan policies for the required distance from a landfill.
Thank you. Mr. Hodgins, any comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the internet was cutting out on a bit on this end. If the panel member could repeat the question, I would better be suited to answer it.
Mr. Otto, he's looking for a repeat of the question.
Okay, I'll try to make it brief. Basically, there are open pits and quarries very close. Do they meet the minimum distance separation for especially for the residential part? And mentioning the trail road dump site, yes, I guess 500 meters is the required distance, but when you drive by on 416, you can smell that. Is it really a good idea to put residential in there?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the mineral aggregate pits have been considered. The licenses are being surrendered on these two lands, and there's also a subdivision proposed for the lands to the south as well. I believe those lands are also in the process of having their license surrendered for the mineral aggregate pits. The trail road landfill facility is considered as part of the planning process. Through the subdivision application, which is ongoing there, they do consider the required separation distance and studies and plans required for certain considerations related to that landfill.
Mr. Vervoort, Mr. Otto, any further comments?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, I don't believe we have any other comments or questions other than Mr. Vervoort drew as a condition, the 5012 standard condition. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hand. The application is approved. Ms. Carrera, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There being no further requirements of this hearing, I'd like to call this hearing to an end and have it adjourned.